Hello everyone, welcome to Cinema Red Pill. My name is Timothy. In this episode, I will be interviewing Rwandan filmmaker Yuhi Amuli. Yuhi's 2020 debut feature film, A Taste of Our Land, won the jury award for Best First Narrative Feature at the Pan-African Film Festival in Los Angeles, California, and Best First Feature by a Director at the African Movie Academy Awards the same year. His latest film, Citizen Kwame, was released last year in 2023. I sat down with him to discuss his life, what inspires his work, and basically his creative philosophy as a filmmaker. So hope you enjoy the episode.
First of all, thank you so much for this opportunity, for the interview. It's humbling that you thought of having an interview with me. My name is Yuhi Amuli. I was born and raised in Rwanda, in the eastern part of the country, on a small island in Lake Kivu.
Okay.
And my journey is a pretty basic one. I went to school like everyone else until when I was in my second year at university. For reasons that were out of my control, I dropped out. And that's when I started documenting myself on screenwriting, because at that time I consider myself lucky that I had discovered my interest in storytelling in general. So I started attending screenwriting workshops. At that time in Rwanda, there were many of them happening. Many of them were organized by people coming outside of the country that wanted to train like the next generation of filmmakers and storytellers in Rwanda. Most of those organizations were interested in hearing stories about the atrocities that had happened in the country. So I was fortunate that those opportunities were there right after I had dropped out of university, and I attended a lot of screenwriting workshops, directing workshops, fiction, documentary. Most of them lasted somewhere between 2 weeks and a month. And that is where I got my filmmaking education and was able to make my first short in 2015. Then the short film was accepted in a few film festivals in Egypt, in France, in South Africa. And from there, I started building my connections and started building colleagues, people who became collaborators later. And from those connections and opportunities that the short film brought, I was able to make, so the short film led to me being able to make another short film in 2017 and another one in 2018. And then I finally was able to travel to Uganda in 2019 and was able to work with Ugandan filmmakers to make my first feature, A Taste of Our Land, which also premiered at a film festival in Los Angeles and was screened at several film festivals around the world.
Yeah.
And then in 2023, and won a lot of awards. Yeah, won a few awards, and made my second feature in 2023, a film called Citizen Kwame. And generally, I think as I continue on this journey to discover myself as a storyteller, what stories I'm more interested in, or what I'd like to tell the world, I feel I'm inclining towards exploring the effects of neocolonialism. So we are in Africa, we feel like, the colonials are gone and we're supposed to feel like things are okay. But as a young African growing up in Africa, I still see so many heartbreaking vestiges of colonialism. And as a storyteller, I would like to explore those, put them in front of people's eyes, and in hopes that it's going to, that my stories are going to lead to some change of mind, which eventually leads to change of situation. So that's it in summary, and thank you for indulging me once again.
Yeah, no, well put, let's say. You also did touch on some things I think I'll maybe ask you a bit more on later. But I think our next question I'd ask you is maybe could you maybe tell me what is the filmmaking scene like in Rwanda? Because people know what the filmmaking scenes are like in their own countries, but they may not be. And again, also Rwanda is a country that's known for many things. Not many know it for its films. But what is? Could you just tell me what the scene is like there? What's the industry in Rwanda?
So my answer is my very personal opinion. Obviously, I'm just one person. I can't claim to know everything about the industry, but I will tell you what I see from my perspective.
Speak your truth.
So it still feels the industry still feels nascent in a way. For some reason, we have people who have been making films for quite a while, for like a couple of decades.
Yeah.
And somehow it still feels like it's coming up. It's a funny feeling. So the way it is there are people who like could still call ourselves young, who are like, we are a group who are making films that are geared towards the international community. Like, we are hoping for international distributions. We present them in international and local film festivals. So there's a group of those few filmmakers. And then we have other people who are very busy, like really busy, producing content, like fast content in Kinyarwanda that they share on YouTube and like places where they are very easily accessible, and they make a lot of content. So they make like series and films, something you could compare to the Nigerian Nollywood type of production.
Yes.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. I know it. I see it a lot in Uganda as well.
Exactly. In Uganda, you also have that. You have people making films in Uganda and people making them in English. I don't know. But yeah, in our country, we have that kind of, I was going to say division, but it's not really a division, because at the end of the day, we are all making like films, like we are all storytellers. So that's in terms of people who are making films. In terms of structure, we really do not have anything resembling a structure yet. For starters, in the country, we have only three cinemas, and they're all in the capital city.
Yeah.
So obviously we don't have like any studio system or stuff like that. It's only recent, like a couple of years ago, that the government is starting to pick interest in the industry. So they set up something called a film office. And then beside it, there is Rwanda Film Federation, and there are like many other institutions that are created here and there to kind of create some form of structure for the industry. Those are there, but they are like everyone is working towards getting them to a point where they work for the industry. So they are there, but they are not completely matured yet. So that's what I see, in my opinion.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's so it's relatable across a lot of our film industries here. So sure,
Can imagine.
they'll be able to relate to it very well. So yeah, maybe now I'm just going to get a bit more into maybe your personal work. So yeah, how would you describe your style as a filmmaker in general with the work you've done so far? You already spoke about colonialism, but how do you work? Like exactly what's your process? How do you describe your process? How do you come up with these ideas and concepts?
Well, somehow I feel a sense of duty to tell stories. I feel like the moment I discovered that I have some form of talent as a storyteller, I felt a sense of duty to capture the world, especially the world around me as it is today. The same way, like our ancestors, like fathers of cinemas did, and
Yeah.
the way people after us will do. I feel a sense of duty to tell, like to capture the world the way it is. So that's why most of my films are, so far at least, stories that were personal. Like most of them came from personal experiences. For example, in A Taste of Our Land, the film about the influence of Chinese people in Africa, predominantly set in a mine. The film was inspired by my experience working in a Chinese-owned mine in the eastern part of Rwanda. I was kind of the middleman between the Chinese people and the laborers.
Yeah.
So that's where the film came, and
Okay.
the film is somehow about, like for the most part, about the things I was feeling and seeing at that time. So my second feature is the same as well. It's about travel visas,
Yeah.
and it, like for the most part, came out of the frustration I felt, trying to get visas to go to different places. Like I explored the feelings like that an African, in my opinion, feels while doing that. So my process is, it comes from that idea that like my ideas come from like deep inside the head or the heart, and then I take some time to like put some notes together to kind of shape the idea into a story that makes sense, and then I write. And so far, again, so that ties into the theme I was talking about. Like if I put all my films in one basket,
Yeah.
I feel they are all about exploring the effects of the vestiges of neocolonialism, of colonialism,
Yeah.
and like how us as young Africans from 2, 3 generations after quote unquote independence,
Yeah.
how we are dealing with it.
Mm.
But so far, all my films have been, so they are like precise, low budget, almost on purpose, because I feel it gives me control to like contain the story, tell exactly what I want to tell without external influences.
Mm.
I don't promise that my future films will probably be like that, but we'll see.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
That's good because
yeah,
also you also mentioned that you kind of got a bit into what A Taste of Our Land is about, which was
yeah.
basically going to be my next question. I was going to go onto the films now. As the two features you've done, A Taste of Our Land and Citizen Kwame. But since you've already mentioned
Mhm.
something about Taste of Our Land, I think I'll just focus a bit more on Citizen Kwame.
Mhm.
Yeah, you kind of spoke about what inspired you to make it. Could you just give us a brief summary of what Citizen Farm is about? And also, compared to A Taste of Ireland, this movie is even
Mhm.
described as minimalist. And yes, I do know
As,
you said it's a minimalist from what my research showed has been
yeah,
saying. It's
yeah,
been described as a minimalist
yeah,
film. So I know
yeah.
budget aside, there were probably reasons,
Mhm.
choices, creative decisions you had to make the film like that. So yeah,
Mhm.
could you just talk a bit about Citizen Kwame, the story, and
Yeah,
why it's a little bit different, at least in style wise, from
yeah.
your previous film, A Taste of Honor.
Right. Well, Citizen Kwame is a minimalistic film, as you said, about travel visas, and it is set in one compound, and it follows the story of Kwame, an African man who lives inside the compound, but who would like to go get food from outside the compound. But before he does that, there is a Caucasian gatekeeper who would like him to get a visa first before the Caucasian can let him out of the compound. So the film, yes, it was minimalistic, and as you said, there is obvious budgetary reasons why I decided to make it that way. But for another big part, the film is set in one compound because that's a huge part that expresses the feeling I was trying to convey. So in a way, the character is boxed in this compound, which when people watch the film, quickly see that it's an allegory or like kind of a metaphor for Africa.
Yeah.
So it was necessary that the film had to be budget or no budget. The film had the story, the way it's written, had to be set in one space in that way. Maybe not a compound. If we had the budget, maybe we'd have had a bigger house, but it was going to be in one space that way. And so that's one of the main point where this film is different from my previous film, because it's even more minimalistic in that way, which makes it more conceptual than narrative, even though it's still quite a clear narrative story. There is never an instance where when I showed the film, people didn't get what the film was about or where it was going. So like it's still kind of, it has a flowing narrative, but it's also heavily conceptual in the sense that it is about this guy in a compound and the Caucasian guy at the gate and a white lady who eventually helps this guy gets a visa out, like a visa out of the compound. So it's about that, but it's still very conceptual in the things that it explores. And you asked where the idea came from. Since you were in Uganda, this is probably going to be obvious. I'm laughing, but it came from a very painful story of I used to be in a relationship with a European woman, and which led me to wanting to travel outside of Africa a lot, then we had a plan for me to move to Europe together, and the process of moving to Europe, it was a pretty traumatic one, because it was something as complex as requiring me to learn an entirely new language, which I did and passed the exam. Then the process forced me to have some deep introspections, went back to Rwanda preparing to go to Europe. And I had to speak to my family, at deeper levels, because I was planning to leave them for at least 5 years. And that kind of led to a change of mind on my part. And then, so that process, which was a very painful one at many levels, birthed the idea of Taste of Our Land. As an artist, making Citizen Kwame was my way to express that, to explore the grief I was feeling at the complications that came with that relationship. So that's a very personal one. So this is what I meant by things coming from personal
experience,
in personal experiences.
Well, that's great, and thanks for sharing. Because I can already tell. That's why there's an authentic feel to your films, because even at West of Ireland, I knew you personally, but I didn't know that you'd actually worked in the mines.
I did for a short time.
So that's very, very interesting. And also being able to share that experience of the trauma of having figured out my immigration or mobility as an African in this world. You can see where the inspiration definitely came from. Thanks for sharing that. Basically, you basically hit the nail on the head on a lot of these questions. I think even one thing you already mentioned, your films tend to center around issues of neocolonialism, or as you say, the vestiges of it. And also someone can definitely also sense aspects of racial tension between characters in the film. Like that's also very central outside of, as you said, like the historical colonialism. But then even as you said, today, there's still like the vestiges of it. So what do you think about issues of like race, power imbalance in the world in general? And do you feel like your films will actually combating this? Could you explain just a bit on that? I hope that was clear.
The issue of race is obviously one of the biggest issues of the 21st century that the world is facing.
Yeah.
But there is a huge influence on how we see it. The influence that's coming from mainly the US and its complicated history.
Yeah.
And I say influence because without the story of the US, someone like me who grew up in Rwanda, where everyone is Rwandan and black, I'm not supposed to see the issue of race necessarily the way, like through the lenses of the story of the United States and slavery and how racism has been everywhere. And with that being said, as an artist, I feel I need to give a different point of view in that regard. Why? Because the first time I saw a white person on my island, it wasn't in the way you'd imagine. This guy was asking me, he was part of the Doctors Without Borders who came on the island to try to set up, they were doing some NGO work and they were trying to help curb a cholera outbreak that was happening on the island. And I was 7'6", and this guy asked me how to use a pit latrine. Like there was a pit latrine there, and he was curious as to how it's used. And my first thought was, wait, what? You're a grown-up person who doesn't know how to use a pit latrine? That's very different from how many American black people view the idea of a white person. And so that's just a very small story, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time discussing how from my perspective as someone who was born and raised in East Africa, where all presidents are black or like the police is black, where like it's never really a question, you know, where when I write a man enters a room, I'm seeing someone who looks like Mandela. Like I don't have that problem, you know, like I don't need to clarify. So I feel like with that point of view, I feel you and I need to assert that point of view in the world discussion, the discussion that has been dominated by the sub-thought that maybe other races are lower than other races, but like this idea that we are all essentially the same, which is the naked truth that people don't seem to embrace very easily today. I don't know if this answer makes sense, but
no, it does.
I hope you will find something.
Yes, I will. No, I already I can hearing it, like I get it. So yes, I totally know what you mean. So I mean, I think actually you've hit the nail on the head on a lot of these questions and given a very interesting and detailed answers. So I think maybe my last two questions for you would be, what advice would you give just young filmmakers on the continent who maybe perhaps look at your work and they're like, we want to do that? What advice would you give them? And also, what next? What's Yuhi working on now that you've basically finished your second feature film? Do you have any other projects in the works? What are you thinking of doing next?
Well, this sounds like my answer is going to sound pretentious because it's invited by a very big question. What's your advice to young filmmakers?
Yeah.
I still think young and I still feel like I'm starting out.
Yeah. No, but you've
But
gotten
what
somewhere. You've gotten somewhere.
yeah, I guess realistically speaking. But the
Yeah.
only thing I would say, which is going to sound a bit crude, is
Yeah.
to just do it. Like
Yeah.
people said this advice several times,
Yeah.
and I've come to realize that it's a very complicated advice when
Mm.
you don't have elements to use, but it's true. Like you just have to do it. You just don't the way they say it is don't wait for permission.
Yeah.
You just have to do it because I say that because most of my films and the steps that I've taken in the film industry came from doing one thing and that one thing leading to another.
Yeah.
And I would like to very properly recognize all the people along the way who helped me get where I am today.
Yeah.
I am really indebted to friends, family, and strangers who really believed in what I was doing and gave me a nudge, a push, like to the next step. But most of those people as well
Yeah.
did that after seeing what I have done, what
Yeah.
I had done. So it still comes back to doing the things. It still surprises me to see that even my oldest films that were made without any hopes of anything that will come out of them still do things today. Like recently we had a screening of A Taste of Our Land in New York last November, and I remember being blown away at the idea that 3 years down the line from when we made the film, people still like watch the film with some interest.
Yeah.
So that's the advice.
Maybe
Yeah.
what next? What next for you? Yeah. What are you?
My next film, I have a new feature film that I'm developing. I finished I finished the script actually, and I'm currently looking for funders. This time I would like to make a more how do I say it? I like for this film to be of a bit of a higher standard than my previous films in terms of production value and outreach. Like I would like it to be, I like to
the scale of the production.
Exactly. I'd like to take it to another scale. So for this one, I'm taking my time. And in the meantime, I should mention that I'm currently doing law school. I would like to be an entertainment lawyer. I think it's something we need in the industry.
Yeah.
So
You definitely need it.
those are the two projects.
Entertainment lawyers, corporate law, all that, it's very needed right now because if people are going to learn how to monetize, take care of the intellectual property as well, those are things we need in place.
That's something I'm very interested in, and right now I'm working towards doing that, like serving our industry in that way. So that's another ongoing project. I'm at law school now. I will see how it's going to materialize in next year, I think.
Okay,
hopefully.
That's good. Oh, so how long is this course? This is basically even outside stuff now. How long is it? How long is this thing, the course that you're doing? The course in entertainment law?
The master's is 1 year, and then I will sit for the bar, which can take some months.
Yeah.
So maximum 2 years, and you guys will have a new entertainment lawyer on the scene.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that was our episode with Rwandan filmmaker Yuhi Amuli. Hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, my name is Timothy, and you are listening to Cinema Red Pill. Bye.
People make films about themselves, what they want, what they love, what they fear most. Here we're nothing but props and their stories.
Somebody saying